Butch Jones on the list of hot seat coaches. The former Tennessee head coach has been in Arkansas State after his internship under Nick Saban. Apparently, that didn't help much. There's some other SEC coaches and other known names on this list that I want to get to. But my, oh my, Butch Jones, what happened in the end to his career? Because it appears to be going downhill to the point of he's going to be a career assistant. He's gotten his now what fourth shot at being a head coach. Most significant was at Tennessee, and now he's at Arkansas State where he could get fired. Your thoughts on Butch Jones? Was he an even worse coach than we thought, or is it a bad situation at Arkansas State?
I think he's a worse coach than we thought. I think let's break down Butch Jones' success for a minute, because I have to be fair to Butch Jones real quick. A lot of the Butch Jones haters will say that, oh, he just inherited what Brian Kelly built because he followed him at Central Michigan and then followed him at Cincinnati. That's actually not true. For those who don't know, Butch Jones' first year at Cincinnati, he went 4-8 right after Cincinnati went 12-0. He actually had to completely rebuild the Cincinnati roster after Brian Kelly had left. And he did a pretty good job and installed his own system. The Central Michigan 3 years, his last year in 2009, he took them 11-2, the best season that team had in school history. And just a few people he found, whatever you think of him now, he found Antonio Brown out of nowhere. All right, that guy was not going to be a football player. And Butch Jones and Zach Azzani at the time found him and scouted him and put him in there. So what I think...
do offset that a little bit by he wanted J.J. Watt to play tight end, but...
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, I mean, on the chessboard of life, that's bringing the queen out too early. Go ahead.
That's very true. Here's what I think happened. Dave, if you remember, he took the head coaching job in 2007. If you remember 2007, that was when Rich Rodriguez was the hottest commodity in college football because of that spread system that he ran, which he really was not Urban Meyer. Rodriguez really was the original crafter of that offense. You know what I'm talking about? The one that Pat White and Steve Slayton just balled out in.
Yep.
So I don't think that was as understood by a lot of teams yet. And that's what Butch Jones cut his teeth in, because he was the wide receivers coach at West Virginia in 2005 and 2006. Before that, he had coached mostly under Mike DeBoer and Brian Kelly. So he kind of understood the spread offense with pro concepts, which is where those zone reads and zone blocking schemes came. I think Butch Jones was running an offense that he had crafted out of that just wasn't fully figured out yet. But by the time he had gotten to the SEC in 2013, let's be honest, Urban Meyer had already had a 6-year run where he was dominant. Gus Malzahn was in the SEC. SEC defensive coordinators had already figured out these different schemes. So I think by the time we got to the SEC, I don't think Butch Jones was a great play caller. I don't think he was that bright of a coach. I think he had a system that he had learned that just people hadn't figured out yet. And
sorry, go ahead.
And so I think that he's a bad evaluator of talent, bad with player development, not as good a recruiter as we thought, and also as the least common sense of any coach I've ever seen on the sideline. He just happened to copy a system that was already successful.
And on our message board, a good line by Rocky Top Tom, Butch Jones knows as much about football as my left foot knows about space exploration. So we're going to name Tom's left foot Elon Musk from now on. So with the coaches that have ties to the SEC and a couple currently in the SEC that are on the hot seat, who are most likely to get fired? And I want to include Butch Jones in that list. And it's brought to you by Andy Mason. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. He will change the way you view real estate. Why? Because he has the best service and the best prices in the biz. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. About to give him a call as I've got a real estate move to make. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Support our sponsors, guys. I've known Andy for, 25 years. And he will take care of you. And you will be very pleased. And you'll never go to another realtor again. Andy Mason. Realestate.com. All the info is there. So other guys on this list, Caleb, are interesting. Eli Drinkwitz, which you know that I'm not high on. And then you have Jimbo Fisher. Let's start with Drinkwitz. Am I the only one that it just feels like he's just kind of holding on for dear life, a la a Butch Jones towards the end? It just doesn't feel like that he's going to be a long-term success at Missouri. And I guess this year would tell the tale, but I don't see Eli before we get to Jimbo Fisher being a long-term answer. But if you're a Tennessee fan, you should want him to stay there as long as humanly possible.
I think Eli Drinkwitz is able to sell their very, very, very close. Because remember, I mean, this team was very close to 10 wins last year. And so I think that that's probably where Eli Drinkwitz is selling, is that he's giving this idea that they're close to turning the corner. You see what I'm saying? And so I feel like
Butch Jones when the East was down.
Yes, a great but see, Butch Jones in 2015 went 9-4 when the East was down and barely lost all 4 games. Eli Drinkwitz went 6-7 and barely lost 4 games. So it's the difference between undefeated and 10-3. But yes, you're right. It's very similar to that. But at the same time, just like Butch Jones in 2015 almost beat Alabama when they won the national title, Eli Drinkwitz last year almost beat Georgia when they won the national title. So there's a lot of selling points, and I think with a lot of returning talent, there's a genuine optimism that they can turn the corner this year and take it to another level. If you remember, Eli Drinkwitz's selling point was he took over Missouri when they were a disaster in 2020, and he went 5-5, which was massively exceeding expectations. A lot of first-year coaches built a reputation for what they did in 2020, and no one should count 2020. It was such a wild year. There was no spring practice, barely any all season. Like, so many factors that go to having a good season just weren't there in 2020. So I think the whole season should be thrown out the window, quite honestly. But that was a selling point.
This sounds insane, Caleb, but I'm going to say it. I'd almost rather be a Missouri football fan than a Texas A&M fan short term, because I think that Jimbo Fisher hangs on, and with Bobby Petrino, they have a semblance of organization that they didn't have on offense before, and that Jimbo Fisher is able to squeeze 2 more years out of that contract. I don't think he'll be fired at the end of this year. I think that at the end of 2024, things get really dicey if they don't improve. But at least with Missouri, here's the way I predict it. Eli Drinkwitz is going to be horrible this year. They're going to be horrible this year. They were 6-7 last year, and they're going to fire him and make a clean break. Now, A&M, I know long-term has more facilities and more resources and all that. So, but short-term, I think I'd almost rather be a Missouri fan than be an A&M fan that's stuck with Jimbo Fisher because of an absurd contract.
I got to be honest with you. I disagree, because I think Missouri is
every time Caleb starts a sentence with "I got to be honest," it's always, "No, Dave, you're wrong."
So Missouri is going to start 5-0 this year. That's my prediction. I made that prediction for a while, because they have South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, Kansas State, Memphis, and Vanderbilt. Kansas State's the only toss-up game of those, and they got them at Columbia. So the 5-0 start is going to give them a lot of momentum down the stretch, where Eli Drinkwitz is going to keep his job. I think the bottom is falling out with Jimbo Fisher this year. I've said that the whole time, and I don't think the Fisher-Bobby Petrino situation is going to work out. And it's really going to baffle Texas A&M fans, because quite honestly, Dave, it's weird that Texas A&M hasn't won a national title ever, because all the dynamics, like the fundamentals are in place for Texas A&M to be a dominant program. This is, I thought of a comparison the other day. Are they the Mets of college football? Because, the Mets have all this money. They should be great in baseball, and they never are.
No, I mean, that's a pretty good comparison. If I were a Texas A&M fan, I would hate to be stuck to that contract. I mean, that would just absolutely drive me crazy on a day-to-day basis.